Hello, I'd like to speak about Jeremiah here for a few moments. Um, when I was looking at Jeremiah, I saw a lot of issues that actually are very applicable to today for God's people and the leaders and some of the issues that they face as well. And I think much of the issues that Jeremiah discussed throughout his book, those are some issues that are very heavily still an issue today. The ideas of idolatry and adultery, worshiping other things or other gods, or indulging in the ways of the world, those are all issues that weren't just an issue for Jerusalem and the people of Judah. Those are issues that plague Americans and Christians today. I mean, the idea of adultery. We live in a world that it's not the same one man, one woman, and they're engaged in marriage. It's sleeping around. The idolatry of worshiping just about everything. Worshiping other people and worshiping them as gods. I mean, one of the biggest that I can think of in America here is LeBron James. A lot of people worship him. And we as a Christian people are very prone to indulging in the ways of the world rather than living out a life of faithful obedience to God and to Jesus. And so I think looking at the way Jeremiah and Yahweh addressed these issues should be central for God's people and God's leaders in the church today. And when thinking about the definition of success and how some would deem Jeremiah's ministry, I think some people probably would see that Jeremiah really didn't have a successful ministry. And like Jeremiah, I come from, well, not I. I've seen many ministers who actually worked in a small church background and in small communities and worked there for years. And in my 22 years that I've lived on the planet of Earth, I've seen preachers who have had these lifelong ministries at these churches for 20 plus years. And many would see that their ministries there were very unsuccessful. Why? Well, because they were a church of 75 and they never grew over that. They never reached this big mega church status. And I would argue that those men, and in some cases some women, they had very successful ministries. Why? Because they were life-changing and they brought others to Christ. And so I believe when I look at Jeremiah and the ministry that he lived out of faithful obedience. He listened and did what God chose, as God told him. I think it should reshape our idea of success for people. And finally, when I look at what Jeremiah, this study has impacted me and what I plan to do with my study of Jeremiah, I can't help but look at Jeremiah's ministry and realize some of the big impacts it had. I mean, this was a man who literally was obedient and faithful to the very end. Even when there were times that were tough or that he had big doubts about what God was doing, Jeremiah stood firm in his belief in Yahweh. He was always faithful. He was always obedient. And when I was looking at some of the prayers that Jeremiah prayed, that man was bold. He used bold prayers to God. And I would love in my life for me to incorporate that. And I love that not only was Jeremiah bold in his prayers, he was bold with the message he proclaimed. And as someone who's going into preaching and youth ministry, being able to proclaim a bold message that Jesus Christ is the light of the world, that's something I would love for me to do in my own life. And I'd love to mirror it not only in my life, but in my ministry.